Over the weekend, Donald Trump announced on Truth Social in a very official-sounding post that he was absolutely 100% going to abuse the power of the federal government and use the Department of Justice to attack his political enemies, to impose long prison sentences upon all of them. Specifically, of course, he is talking about the people involved with rigging the 2020 election, which of course did not happen. Donald Trump and his allies brought 62 different lawsuits challenging those election results in 2020, and they lost every single one of them because they had no evidence to back up any of their claims. Independent audits, including those funded by Donald Trump himself, showed that there were no shenanigans in the 2020 election. It is a complete and total lie told by Donald Trump to make himself feel better for losing to President Biden. Nevertheless, Donald Trump got on Truth Social on Sunday and said this: "Cease and desist." Okay, so right off the bat, he's trying to make it sound like this is an official legal proclamation that we all have to abide by. Anyway, cease and desist. I, together with many attorneys and legal scholars, am watching the sanctity of the 2024 presidential election very closely because I know better than most the rampant cheating and skullduggery that has taken place by the Democrats in the 2020 presidential election. It was a disgrace to our nation. Therefore, the 2024 election, where votes have just started being cast, will be under the closest professional scrutiny, and when I win, all caps on that, those people that cheated will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences so that this depravity of justice does not happen again. We cannot let our country further devolve into a third-world nation, and we won't. Please beware that this legal exposure extends to lawyers, political operatives, donors, illegal voters, and corrupt election officials. Those involved in unscrupulous behavior will be sought out, caught, and prosecuted at levels, unfortunately, never seen before in our country. So he's going to launch prosecutions based on his own lie that he created, and he's going to abuse the power of the federal government to take out his political enemies, right? Politicians, donors, members of the media, election officials. Now, there's several things he's doing here, but the first and most obvious, of course, is letting us know he's going to weaponize the federal government against all of us. If you are not a MAGA hat wearing 100% of the time Trump supporting individual here in the United States, he just put a target on your back. A legal prosecutorial target is now on all of us if Donald Trump gets back into office. That is what he is pledging. And meanwhile, by the way, we do have Republicans in Congress who are still having their little investigation into the weaponization of the federal government, completely ignoring that Donald Trump is literally out there promising to do exactly that if he gets back into office. I will weaponize the federal government, is what Donald Trump is saying here. Now, the second thing, of course, is far more sinister, believe it or not. He mentions specifically election officials. Now, ever since the 2020 election, we have had poll workers, election officials, other kinds of election workers that have quit their jobs because of the amount of death threats that they have received from the MAGA community, from the Trump supporters. So these people have left those positions because Donald Trump already weaponized his base against these individuals. So what he is doing by specifically targeting these people in this post is, just like the rest of us, putting an even bigger target on their backs for his MAGA base. And hopefully, in his mind, getting more of these people to leave the position so that his MAGA freaks can instead take over the elections, and then, you know, they'll be the ones engaging in the cheating and skullduggery, as Donald Trump himself put it. But that, to me, honestly, is far more sinister than him saying he's going to go after everybody else allegedly involved in this cheating that, of course, never took place. These election officials, local officials, state officials, whatever it is, these people do not deserve the kind of scrutiny, and of course, certainly nobody deserves the threats that these people are receiving. And this has been going on now for 4 years. give or take 2 months because, you know, it happened immediately following the 2020 election. But this is where we're at now. Good people leaving good jobs that they have had for a long time because of the harassment that they are receiving. These people have been doxxed. They have had people show up at their homes to threaten them. Some of them have had to move. Some of them have had to move to completely different cities. And here Donald Trump is once again targeting these specific individuals because he knows if he does that, he knows what his base is going to do. As I've said repeatedly over this last year, Donald Trump has gotten to the point where he doesn't even have to tell his supporters who to go target. Or, excuse me, he doesn't have to tell them to target them. He just has to name them, and his base automatically knows, okay, that is a person, this is an individual, or this is a position, this is an outlet, this is whatever it is that I now have to go out and deal with for Donald Trump. He is essentially giving me orders, even though he is choosing his words carefully enough to avoid any kind of real legal liability for what his supporters may do. And that, of course, is one thing that Donald Trump has gotten better at ever since that Stop the Steal rally where he told people to fight like hell. He's far more careful with his language today, and his base picked up on it. Okay, he can't specifically tell me to do this, but since he laid out right here this whole list of people I need to go after, I know what he wants me to do, and I'm going to do it. Because that is how unhinged and unfortunately large portion of his base is. Now, I'm not saying by any stretch that every single person out there with a MAGA hat or a Trump yard sign is going to do these things. But he knows he doesn't need every one of them. He just needs one person here, one person there, 2 or 3 somewhere else, and suddenly he has his little revolution. He has his targets. That is what he is telling us. So again, to me, that part is so much more dangerous than the weaponization fact. Because here's why. Because you may be disagreeing with me. You're like, no, Farron, if he weaponizes the DOJ to go after everybody, that's far more sinister. That one hinges on him getting back in office. If he doesn't get back in office, he doesn't have a DOJ to weaponize. So that threat goes away. But the threat to these election workers does not. In fact, if anything, if Trump loses, the threats against the election workers are going to get worse. So win or lose, the threats still exist against the election workers, the election officials, but we won't have to worry, you know, depending on the outcome of the election, on the weaponization of the DOJ itself, only if he wins. So threats against election workers, that's going to happen win or lose. Weaponization of the DOJ, that only happens if he wins, and that is something that, of course, if the voters make their voices heard, we can put an end to that, and then we have to work on protecting these election workers, I mean, from now through the election, so that what happened after 2020 doesn't happen again this year. Hi, everyone. This here is little Athena, and Athena would like to know why you haven't subscribed to Fair and Balanced yet, so please, don't let Athena down. Subscribe today.